Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Mark Buzz, and today
Hi, everybody.
we're diving into the world of Mormon crickets.
Yeah.
You know those critters that kind of sound like a bad country song?
Great.
Like eating my crops and eating my garden.
Uh-huh.
Eating my...
Well, you get the picture. Yeah, I'm Anna Bugs, and let me tell you, those country songs might not be too far off.
Yeah.
Mormon crickets can be a real headache, especially out west.
Yeah, and if you're one of those folks out west, or even if you just like learning about pests and enjoy these deep dives, make sure to hit that follow button.
Absolutely.
And share this episode with your friends.
Yes.
Knowledge is power, right?
It is.
Especially when it comes to critters that want to eat your prize-winning tomatoes.
That's right.
And for even more tips on keeping pests away, don't forget to follow Simple Pest Management on social media.
Great advice.
They're the pros. They got a wealth of information to share.
Yeah.
So before we get into like the nitty-gritty of battling these insects, I got to say, the name always throws me off. Mormon crickets.
Right.
Are they actually crickets?
That's a great question. It's one of those cases where the common name is a little misleading.
Okay.
Mormon crickets are actually shield-backed katydids.
Hmm.
So think like grasshoppers, but with a bit more armor.
Okay.
They're actually more closely related to grasshoppers and locusts than true crickets.
Shield-backed katydids, so they're like the knights in shining armor of the insect world?
Yeah.
Except these knights are more into munching on my prize-winning tomatoes.
That's a good way to put it.
Got it. Okay, so how do we even know if these armored garden invaders are setting up camp in our yards? Like, what should we be looking for?
Well, unfortunately, the first thing you might notice is the damage,
Right.
chewed leaves, damaged crops.
Right.
They're not picky eaters.
Right.
And they can really take a toll on your plants. But there are some telltale signs, even before the destruction starts.
Okay, so before I'm out there with my magnifying glass, inspecting every nibble on my tomato plants, what should I be on the lookout for?
Well, you mentioned swarms earlier, and that's a big one.
Right.
Seeing large groups of these insects kind of moving together, almost like a wave.
Wow.
That is a definite sign of a Mormon cricket problem.
That is a little unnerving, the thought of like a wave of hungry, armored katydids coming at my garden.
Right.
And speaking of unnerving, I've also heard that they make a pretty distinctive sound, too.
Yes, they're chirping.
Okay.
It's not quite the same as a cricket's chirp. It's more of a rasping or clicking sound. And when there's a large infestation, it can be quite loud and persistent.
Okay.
Imagine like a chorus of tiny clicking sounds.
Yeah.
Not exactly the soothing sounds of nature you want in your backyard.
Definitely not the soundtrack I'm looking for in my garden oasis.
Right.
So let's say I've noticed a few of these signs. A suspicious chirp here, a nibbled leaf there. Like, what's the next step?
Yeah.
Do I just run for the hills? Okay.
The good news is there are things that you can do to control these critters.
Okay.
And the sooner you act, the better.
Okay.
Early intervention is key to preventing a small problem
Gotcha.
from turning into a full-blown invasion.
So let's talk solutions.
Okay.
I know there's like the DIY approaches and the professional options, but I'm all about trying to handle things myself first.
Of course.
You know, like what are some effective DIY methods that we can try?
One of the simplest and most effective methods is creating physical barriers.
Okay.
Since Mormon crickets can't fly, a smooth surface they can't climb over can be a great deterrent.
Okay.
Think like plastic sheeting around your garden beds or metal flashing along your fences.
I've even heard of people digging shallow trenches around their gardens.
Yes.
So the crickets fall in and they can't climb back out because of those smooth sides.
Exactly.
It's kind of like a moat.
Right.
But for insects.
Exactly. Any kind of smooth vertical surface can stop them in their tracks.
Gotcha. Now, if you're looking for something a little more natural, there's diatomaceous earth.
Yeah.
I've heard of that. It sounds pretty high-tech for something so natural. How does it actually work?
Well, those fossilized diatoms have microscopic sharp edges.
Well.
And when insects come into contact with it, it essentially dehydrates them, leading to, well, their demise.
So it's like a tiny fossilized obstacle course that's fatal for the crickets.
Yeah.
But safe for my plants and pets.
Exactly. It's a great option for people who are looking for a non-toxic, environmentally friendly solution.
That's a big plus for me. Are there any other natural solutions that are worth trying out?
Absolutely. You can actually make a simple and effective trap using molasses and water.
Really?
It sounds strange.
It does.
But Mormon crickets are attracted to sweet things.
Okay.
So you mix the molasses and water in these shallow pans, and the crickets are attracted to that sweetness, and then they get stuck and they can't escape.
So I'm guessing this isn't like a catch and release type of trap.
Not quite. It's a bit sticky, but it can really help reduce those numbers.
Okay, so we've got barriers, traps, but I imagine there's also that ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Yeah.
Kind of wisdom here, too.
Absolutely. Property maintenance plays a huge role in preventing Mormon cricket infestations.
Okay.
And it's not just about aesthetics. It's about making your less inviting to these critters.
So what are some key things that we can do around our property to kind of make it less appealing to these hungry hordes?
Mowing regularly is a big one.
Okay.
Tall grass and weeds be like cover and food for Mormon crickets.
Right.
So keeping your lawn trimmed short removes those hiding places, makes it less hospitable.
And I imagine keeping things tidy in general is a good idea.
Absolutely. Remove piles of debris, fallen branches, anything else that can provide shelter.
Yeah.
And be sure to keep your compost piles well contained, pet food secured. Any potential food source should be stored properly.
So it's all about making my yard less like an all-you-can-eat buffet for Mormon crickets. More like a well-maintained, unwelcoming zone.
Think of it as creating a cricket-free zone.
I like the sound of that.
Around your home and garden.
Our sources also mention something called nymphs.
Yes.
And the importance of targeting them. I have to admit, I'm not quite sure what that means in the context of Mormon crickets.
That's a great point to bring up. Nymphs are basically young Mormon crickets.
Okay.
They haven't fully matured yet.
Gotcha.
They hatch in the spring, and that's a crucial time to target them.
Why is that? Are they, like, easier to control at that stage?
They are. Nymphs are smaller, and they haven't developed their tough exoskeletons yet.
Right.
Making them more vulnerable to control methods.
Okay.
Plus, by targeting them early, you can prevent them from reaching adulthood and reproducing.
So it's like getting ahead of the problem before it really takes hold.
Exactly. It's a proactive approach that can save you a lot of headaches down the road.
Right. And while we're on the topic of prevention,
yes,
there's one more thing you can do to make your property less appealing to Mormon crickets.
Okay.
And that is sealing up any cracks or gaps in your home's foundation.
Yes.
Why is that important? I thought we were talking about keeping them out of the garden, not the house.
While they prefer to feast outdoors, Mormon crickets can sometimes wander indoors, especially if they're looking for shelter or food.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So sealing up those entry points is kind of like an extra layer of defense, just in case.
Exactly. It's all about being prepared and giving those Mormon crickets no chance to make themselves at home, whether it's your garden or your house.
Yeah, I'm all about a multi-pronged approach.
Absolutely.
Now, we've covered a lot of DIY strategies, but let's face it, sometimes those DIY efforts just aren't enough.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So when do we know it's time to call in the professionals?
That's a great question, and we'll delve into that in part 2 of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore the signs that it's time to bring in the big guns.
Right.
Those pest control professionals who have the experience and the tools to handle larger infestations.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a good place to pause for now.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground, like identifying these critters, understanding their life cycle, exploring those effective DIY strategies. And remember, if you're finding this deep dive helpful, be sure to like and follow us.
We appreciate your support.
We'll be back in part 2 to talk about those situations where you might need a little extra help from the pros.
Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Thanks for having me back.
We're picking up right where we left off, talking about those times when DIY efforts just aren't cutting it.
Yeah.
And you're facing a Mormon cricket situation that's got you feeling like you're losing the battle.
Okay, I have to admit, I'm one of those people who sometimes holds out a little too long before calling in the pros.
Yeah.
But when it comes to these critters, what are some of those signs that it's like time to wave the white flag and get some expert help?
Well, if you've diligently tried those DIY methods, you know the barriers, the traps, the meticulous yard maintenance.
Right. And you're still seeing large numbers of Mormon crickets, that's a pretty good indicator that you might need professional intervention.
So if my carefully constructed moat of diatomaceous earth is being overrun, it might be time to call in the cavalry.
Exactly.
Okay.
Or if the infestation seems particularly widespread, like it's not just your garden, but your entire property's under siege.
Right.
That's another sign that you might need to call in reinforcements.
Makes sense. It's like those old war movies. Sometimes you need air support.
Exactly.
But I have to be honest, professional pest control, it can be kind of an investment.
Yeah.
It's something I'd want to avoid if possible.
I understand that concern.
Yeah.
But here's the thing to consider.
Okay.
The cost of professional pest control often pales in comparison to the potential cost of damage to your property or crops if those Mormon crickets are left unchecked.
So it's a bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
Weighing the cost of professional help
versus the potential cost of just letting those critters have their way with my garden.
Precisely. It's about assessing the situation and making an informed decision.
Okay.
And remember, professionals bring a lot to the table. They have the experience, the specialized equipment, the knowledge of the most effective treatment methods.
And speaking of treatment methods,
yes,
one of the things that always makes me a little hesitant about calling in pest control is like the use of pesticides.
Yeah.
I try to be as eco-conscious as possible.
Right.
And the thought of harsh chemicals being sprayed all around my property makes me a bit uneasy.
I completely understand that concern.
Yeah.
And the good news is that many pest control companies, like Simple Pest Management, are very aware of those concerns.
Okay.
And they prioritize environmentally friendly approaches.
So what kinds of eco-friendly options are out there for tackling Mormon crickets?
Well, there are a few different approaches.
Okay.
One method involves using targeted baits that attract the crickets and disrupt their life cycle.
Right.
These baits are often formulated with ingredients that are less harmful to other insects and the environment.
So it's like a more selective approach.
Exactly.
Targeting the Mormon crickets specifically, rather than like a broad spectrum pesticide that could affect beneficial insects as well.
Exactly. And there are also biological control methods, which involve introducing natural predators of Mormon crickets to the environment.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Like setting loose a bunch of cricket-eating superheroes.
You could say that.
Okay.
Think of it as harnessing the power of nature to kind of restore balance.
Okay.
There are certain types of birds, parasitic wasps, and even some ground beetles that love to feast on Mormon crickets.
So it's like creating a little ecosystem in my yard where the good guys take care of the bad guys.
Exactly. It's a fascinating area of pest management.
Yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly popular as people seek out more sustainable solutions.
So it sounds like there are quite a few options when it comes to professional pest control.
Yes.
From the targeted baits to the biological control methods. It's not just about dousing everything in chemicals.
Precisely, and that's why it's so important to do your research and find a company that aligns with your values and priorities.
Right.
A reputable pest control company will be happy to discuss their methods and address any concerns you might have about environmental impact.
And I imagine they can also provide some valuable insight.
Absolutely.
Based on their experience dealing with these kinds of outbreaks.
They have a deep understanding of the life cycle and behaviors of these insects, which helps them to develop targeted and effective control strategies.
Okay.
They can assess the severity of the infestation, identify potential hot spots, and recommend the most appropriate course of action.
So it's like having a cricket battling strategist on your side.
Exactly. They can help you develop a comprehensive plan that addresses the immediate problem and puts preventative measures in place to keep those Mormon crickets from making a comeback.
Okay, that peace of mind is definitely worth something.
It is.
Now, while we focus specifically on Mormon crickets today, I imagine a lot of these principles, prevention, early intervention, knowing when to call in the pros, can be applied to other pest problems as well.
Absolutely. Whether you're dealing with ants, spiders, termites, or any other unwelcome critters, those core principles are essential for effective pest management.
It's all about taking a proactive approach and not letting those little invaders take over your home and garden.
Precisely. It's about empowering yourself with knowledge and taking control of the situation.
Well said, and I think that's a great place to wrap up part 2 of our Mormon cricket deep dive.
We'll be back in part 3 with some final thoughts and a challenge for you.
Awesome. See you then. Welcome back to the deep dive.
It's time to wrap up our exploration of the world of Mormon crickets.
You know, it's funny. When we first started this, I mostly thought of these critters as like a nuisance. Like those ants that always seem to find a way into my kitchen. But we've kind of uncovered a whole lot more about them.
There's a lot more to them than meets the eye.
Yeah, they're definitely more than just a nuisance, that's for sure. Like they have this fascinating life cycle, these unique behaviors. And they can cause some serious damage.
They can.
If they're not kept in check.
Absolutely.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about something. That on the surface seems pretty straightforward. Like, I mean, a cricket's a cricket, right? But we learned Mormon crickets aren't even true crickets.
No.
They're shieldback katydids, more closely related to grasshoppers.
That's right.
And those swarms, they're not just random gatherings.
Right.
There's like a reason behind them, a purpose.
There is.
It's all about survival and finding resources. And it's not just about protecting our gardens and crops either.
No.
These outbreaks can actually have a real impact on the ecosystem.
On the whole ecosystem.
Yeah, it's a whole.
Yeah.
So before we sign off,
okay,
let's take a moment to recap some of those key takeaways, those like nuggets of knowledge that we hope you'll carry with you long after this deep dive is over.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that stand out to you?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is the importance of early detection and action. Okay. Knowing the signs of a Mormon cricket infestation, the swarms, the plant damage, that distinctive chirping sound can make all the difference.
And knowing your options, from those like simple DIY barriers and traps to those more targeted professional methods.
Absolutely. And knowing when to call in the professionals. Yeah. Sometimes you just need that extra help.
Right.
Simple Pest Management is a great resource. They've got a wealth of knowledge. And they're committed to using those eco-friendly approaches.
Yeah, they're definitely worth checking out if you're facing a pest problem.
Absolutely.
It's got you feeling overwhelmed.
Right.
You can find them on social media or visit their website for more information.
And remember, knowledge is power.
Yes.
Especially when it comes to pest management.
Couldn't agree more. Now, before we go, we like to leave you with a little something to ponder. A question for you.
Okay.
If you discovered a Mormon cricket problem on your property, what would be your first step?
Would you head straight for the diatomaceous earth?
Right.
Start constructing a barrier? Yeah. Or maybe give Simple Pest Management a call?
It's something to think about. And hey, maybe I'll spark a conversation with your friends and family about these fascinating and sometimes frustrating creatures.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for joining us on this journey into the world of Mormon cricket control.
Thanks for having me.
We hope you found it informative and, dare I say, entertaining.
I hope so too.
Until next time, stay curious, keep exploring, and remember, a little knowledge can go a long way.
That's right.
In protecting your home, your garden, and the world around you.